All right, let's get right into it. We're about to take a tour of what is, without a doubt, the most intricate, most fascinating object in the entire known universe.
So to really set the stage here, I want to start with a question for you. When you think complex, what comes to mind? Maybe distant galaxies or, tiny quantum particles? Forget all that for a second. What do you think is the single most complex thing we've ever discovered?
Well, it turns out the answer is actually inside your own head. It's that 1.4 kilogram, that's about 3 pounds, of spongy, kind of wrinkly tissue nestled right inside your skull. Yep, the human brain. That's what we're exploring today, and trust me, it's an absolute marvel.
Okay, so to really get a grip on the brain, we first have to see where it fits in the grand scheme of things, right? It's not just floating around doing its own thing. It's the supreme command center for this huge, sprawling network. So that's where we'll start, the brain as the body's control center.
So our entire nervous system? It's basically split into two main parts. First up, you've got the central nervous system, the CNS for short. That's the brain and the spinal cord. Think of it like the main headquarters. And then you've got the peripheral nervous system, or the PNS. That's the huge network of nerves branching out everywhere, carrying all the messages to and from that headquarters.
And you can really see that split pretty clearly here. The CNS, again, that's the brain and spinal cord, is like the core command line, this massive superhighway for information. And all those other lines branching out, that's the PNS, the whole intricate web of messengers that connects every single part of your body back to that control center.
All right, so now that we've got the big picture, let's zoom in on the main event. We're going to start our tour on the surface, kind of exploring the brain's unique geography. So if you look at the brain from the side, 3 main parts just kind of jump out at you right away. You've got that huge wrinkly part on top. That's called the cerebrum. Then, tucked underneath at the back, you see that smaller, really rippled part. That's the cerebellum. And then connecting everything down to the spinal cord is the brainstem. It's basically the stock it all sits on.
Now that giant cerebrum is so big that we actually map it out in 4 major sections, or what we call lobes. And the names are pretty simple actually. They're just named after the skull bones that protect them. So you've got the frontal lobe up front, the parietal lobe behind that, the temporal on the side, and then the occipital lobe at the very back.
And here's the really cool part. These aren't just random sections. This is a functional map. Different areas are super specialized. That occipital lobe at the back, it's all about vision. The temporal lobe on the side, that's dedicated to processing sound and hearing. And the parietal lobe, that's a huge hub for your sense of touch and knowing where you are in space. Every single region has a specific job. Okay, so we've had a good look at the outside, but honestly, some of the most critical machinery is hidden away deep inside. So, you ready? Let's venture inside. All right, let's do it. Let's take a look inside. This is where we're going to find the core components that kind of run the whole show from behind the scenes, regulating our most basic fundamental functions. If we could slice the brain right down the middle, we'd get this incredible view. You can see the thalamus, which is kind of like a major sensory relay station, and right below that, the hypothalamus. These deep structures, plus the brainstem, they're basically our survival hardware. They regulate everything: breathing, body temperature, hunger, all the stuff we don't even think about. And see this big arching thing right here? That's the corpus callosum. The best way to think of it is as a massive superhighway, just packed with nerve fibers. It's a thick bridge that connects the brain's left and right sides, letting them talk to each other constantly. And if we go even deeper, you can see it in this kind of phantom view. There are 2 structures you've probably heard of. First, the almond-shaped amygdala. That's a critical hub for processing emotions, especially something like fear. And right next to it is the hippocampus, which is absolutely essential for making new memories. So yeah, emotion and memory, sitting right there at the core of it all. Pretty amazing. Okay, so we've seen the big structures, the geography of the brain, but how does it all actually work? I mean, what's going on in there? Well, the real magic happens at a totally microscopic level. So let's dive way, way down and see how the brain's individual cells, the neurons, actually talk to each other. Before we go on, I just want you to let this number sink in for a second. 100 billion. That's roughly how many of these specialized cells are packed into your brain doing all of this incredible work right now. So what are these cells? They're called neurons, and they are the fundamental units, the tiny building blocks of the entire nervous system. Their entire job, their whole purpose, is just to transmit signals, to talk to one another. So how do they talk? It's this beautiful little process called neurotransmission, and you can break it down into 4 basic steps.
Step 1. An electrical signal zips down and arrives at the very end of a neuron. Step 2. That arrival triggers the release of these little chemical messengers. We call them neurotransmitters. Step 3. Those messengers float across a microscopic gap. And finally, Step 4, they lock onto receptors on the next neuron in line, which activates it and passes the signal on. It's like a tiny, super fast relay race.
And that tiny little gap I just mentioned, it's got a name, and it's incredibly important. It's called the synapse. See, the electrical signal can't actually jump across that gap, so it has to be converted into that chemical signal to get the message across. Just think about this. Every single thought you have is basically a storm of signals crossing trillions, literally trillions of these synapses.
Okay, wow, let's pull back out from that microscopic view for a second and put all these pieces together. It's time to really appreciate just how amazing and complex your brain is.
I mean, think about the journey we just took. We started on the outside, looking at those specialized lobes. Then we went deep inside to the structures that regulate our very being. The brain really is a universe of interconnected systems, from the biggest parts all the way down to those tiny, tiny cells.
So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Everything that makes you, well, you, every single thought you have, every memory you cherish, every powerful feeling you experience, it's all the result of this incredibly intricate dance between the physical structures we've seen and those trillions of chemical signals firing between them every single second of every day. It's just an astonishingly complex piece of biological machinery. Which, of course, leaves us with one final and kind of profound question to think about. If all of this, all the stuff we've looked at today, is the hardware, then what does that make the mind?